So, welcome, Hal, to the Coaching Hub. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your coaching journey so far? So, where it begun, where the sort of the buzz for it come from, and where you are now.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, in terms of my journey, I realized I wasn't going to play at a top level from a young age. I think I always enjoyed the coaching element and the supporting element. I think even from a young age, um, I always wanted to be like a school teacher. That was the first sort of job I wanted to do. So I sort of had that idea of helping people and supporting people. Um, and my first role, I suppose, was in a school, was in a secondary school, where I worked with children with sort of what would you call it, additional needs on a one-to-one support level. So I was able to work with them, and that's where I sort of started to get my skills. That was after university. So in university, I did a sports studies course at USW, where I started to do my coaching badges. So there was a little bit of coaching on the side, but then this other element. So I'd always been coaching. Before I moved into academy football, it was as much coaching as I could do. So I was working at a Welsh Premier League academy. At the same time, I was working at Cardiff City's development centres, working with their 6, 7, 8-year-olds. I was working in senior football. I was working with local Welsh Premier League sides, just trying to get that experience across the full platform. So I was working with the 6 and 7s, the Welsh Premier League Academy. It was more the IDPs, so you're looking at like 14, 15-year-olds, and then obviously senior football. So I did that for a few years. Alongside that, I moved into teaching, where I would support PE lessons, again on a small one-to-one basis, and then into leading classes and leading sort of curriculums and things like that. And that was sort of my background prior to getting into professional football. I did that for a good number of years, tried to just get as much experience as I could. And then I was given the opportunity to coach at Swansea City within their foundation phase. I did that for about 6, 7 months, and then I was offered an opportunity to go into Cardiff City. So I made the move from Swansea to Cardiff. It was purely location, nothing anything else. It was just easier to get to. The Cardiff City's training ground was 20 minutes from my house. Swansea's was a lot further, and the demands was a lot more from down at Swansea in terms of contact time. And I worked part-time at Cardiff City for probably about 3 or 4 years before I was offered the opportunity to come in full-time. Obviously, with a lot of Cat 2 and Cat 3 clubs, Cardiff City being a Cat 2 academy, the opportunities to just purely be a coach is quite small. There's not the budget for it. There's not the requirements for it for audit purposes. So I came in on a dual role. So I came in as academy kit manager and also a coach. That allowed me to do my coaching, but also the doors that opened in terms of the skill set that it required. It got me into football, and it got me understanding how day-to-day football works. It got me working with the professional development phase around the 18s, around the 21s. And that obviously it was almost like CPD in itself, working with that all the time, working in that environment. Different skill sets in terms of time management, organization skills that you bring into your coaching, you try and cross over. And I did that for 6 or 7 years. I was fortunate enough to support at first team level. I was fortunate enough to support at 21s, 18s, etc. Just really get to see how everything works, how an academy operates. And then I was offered the role of assistant youth development phase, working with the under 16s group. I'd previously been working with the under-16s for the past 4 or 5 years prior to that job, but that was my first full-time role in coaching, and I did that. That was so I was assistant to the lead phase who oversaw it. I was in charge of almost like the mini phase, the 15-16s program. Um, Again, I did that for uh, probably another couple of years. I think I did in all. I think I coached the 16s for about 8 years consistently. And then, like anything, I think you look for a new challenge and you look for something to try and challenge yourself and test yourself. And this opportunity came up at Derby County to be the lead individual coach for the 17s to the 21s. It's an area that I was looking to get into, and I was fortunate enough to be offered the role. I've been doing the role for 3 months now, and that's where I'm at currently. So I've moved from sort of a lot of part-time work and in the education field, moving into full-time football, and working with older players and across a stretch of the of the different age groups, whether it be the top to the bottom, and now moving into a Category 1 academy, working with individuals and the team within the professional development phase.
There's lots of different experiences there. And in terms of, you said then initially you wanted to go into sort of teaching side of it initially. Was there always an element of it, I want to get into professional football, or did that just sort of come the more experience you got and maybe the closer you got to it, you then started to see sort of maybe that light at the end of the tunnel in terms of pro football, or was that always the ambition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think football was always the aim and the goal. Unfortunately, in the area that I live in, in South Wales, the opportunities for professional football is quite small. So you've got Cardiff, Swansea, Newport, Bristol Rovers, Bristol City. Apart from that, really, there's no other pro clubs without further travelling. Um, I was young as well, sort of, I think teaching is what I wanted to do. And then when I got into teaching, I was still coaching all the time. That was very much, and I was trying to use both. I was trying to use, at the start, I suppose I was trying to use my coaching to develop my teaching. And then on the other side, I suppose I was trying to get my teaching into my coaching and but it always football was the element that I wanted to go in. I was fortunate that I had a really, really good line manager and headmistress who I was sort of very clear when I came in that, look, if anything was to come up in professional football, I'd like to take that opportunity. And they were really, really supportive in that. I was able to do my coaching badges while still working. I was able to go on study visits. They were really, really supportive around that, knowing that ultimately my end goal was to try and get into professional football. And that's why I suppose if I'd have waited for just a coaching role, I probably wouldn't be where I am now because of that opportunity to just coach. I think I needed to take that role, that step into professional football, into full-time roles. I probably wasn't ready for full-time coaching, although I might have thought that. I probably wasn't ready until he went in, and I went in as an academy kit manager, and you see how it operates, what the lead YDP is doing, what the assistant YDP is doing, what the role needs, the level of detail, what's happening in the under 18s, what's happening in the 21s, the level of detail that's going on there, and you almost sit back and go, "Oh, yeah, you think you're ready, but you're actually not ready." So yeah, without those, it did, but it was always professional football was the goal, was where I wanted to go, and there's definitely times where I thought, you're not sure if you're going to get in that because you are competing with so many people for one job, especially when you're trying to start out and get on the ladder. Um, but yeah, I think it was always professional football. It was how I got there, I suppose. It was the route that I took to get there, but yeah, it was always professional football.
Yeah, you mentioned there about how hard it is to maybe get on the ladder and having that support from your line manager to allow you, because we all know to work in professional football you need qualifications, but they want experience and they want these things. Or if you're working full time, it can be really difficult to do those things. So to have that support is obviously massive.
Mm.
In terms of there, you spoke then lots of experience, but is this something that you enjoy the most? Is it the organisation side of it? So, is it the coaching side of it? Is there an element to it that you think that's me? I love that element of it, or is it just all of it? Or
I suppose it's different things at different times. I think I love being on the grass, being around the players, coaching, getting to know them, building relationships with them. Um, that's the real buzz in terms of seeing them develop and seeing them progress, seeing them sort of that light bulb moment where they go, okay, I understand now, or them applying something that you've sort of helped them with. Being on the grass and being in and around the players is the best part. I think that's the real enjoyment. But I also think I love being around the staff as well. I think, I'm been fortunate enough to work with so many good coaches and so many good MDTs. I've been fortunate to work with some really top level sports scientists, some really qualified physios, some brilliant goalkeeper coaches, etc. And I think being around that group of staff, I really enjoy as well. Where you're challenging each other, you're pushing each other, you've got that camaraderie. I think that's the real sort of two bits for me. The bits for the players, excuse me, the bits for the staff. But yeah, I suppose you're right in that sense. There's different times. The day-to-day operations of working in football is great. It's not when it's hammering down with rain and it's freezing cold. That's not. In the summer, it's great when you're in your shorts and you're outside. But yeah, the day-to-day operations of it, you get a buzz off that as well. I also enjoy I suppose sometimes it's the tactical element as well. Whether you're building to a game, whether you're building up to something, it's how the week looks, how you structure your week, how you're going to build it towards this outcome on the weekend. I really like that as well. That sort of, how it starts on the Monday to how it looks at 11 o'clock on a Saturday, and seeing that work sort of come through.
obviously you've worked with different age groups as well. You mentioned then around the work that working week leading up to maybe a match on a Saturday. Do you find now working with the older age groups, or your experience of working with the older age groups, do you find that that's the area that you maybe enjoy the most because it has that added competitiveness, I suppose, as you get older through the age groups?
Yeah, it can do it. I think, building up to Youth Cup is a Youth Cup game is always just a little different, and that's okay. I quite like that. I quite like that it's a little different, that you're giving the players a different experience, that there's a little bit of added pressure around it, and probably more realistic to what it would look like in the first team environment. And I was fortunate enough to get those experiences when I was at Cardiff. We qualified for the Premier League Cup semi-final twice. We were fortunate, so we won the Floodlit Cup. We had those opportunities to give those players those experiences in that competitive environment. But yeah, I think you do. I think you find at 16, 17s, 18s, there is certain times where that tactical element is sort of heightened, and that's okay. There's also times in your normal games program where maybe it's more principle based. Maybe it's not worried so much about the opposition. It's how can you embed your style within the game. I think that's a different type of tactical element. If you look at the opposition, you think, right, okay, how can we press? How are we able to press in this our way against this opposition? We like to build from the back. How are we able to build with the opposition that press like this? Okay, how do we do it? And sort of building that picture and then passing that on to the players, and giving them ideas and things like that. But yeah, the competitive stuff is different, and that's good. But it's getting the good balance between, it's not always competitive, and it's not always, although the games might always be competitive, it's not always built up in the same way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's certainly something. I've worked a little bit in senior football, just sort of like tier 3 in Wales and step 5 in England. And that's probably the bit I miss the most is the competitiveness on a Saturday of trying to get a result. Obviously, still work a little bit in development football. But yeah, I miss that competitiveness of trying to outwit the opposition to try and get the 3 points and
Yeah,
changing tactics in the game. It's like a game of chess, isn't it? And it's
yeah,
brilliant
exactly.
seeing how teams change to try and overcome the tactics that you're putting on, and then try and do the same. And it's almost like back and forth, isn't it, in games sometimes?
Yeah, that is, yeah, you're right. I think you've knocked the nail in the head where you said about the development bit as well. I think, 18s and 21s football is still development football for me. I think it's still largely development, and I think it's, although there is that increased element and you are teaching them how to win, you think of games where you have to tweak something or adjust something, and you're doing it for a result, but also you're doing it to expose the players to a different style or a different challenge. We'll have teams that play against us that sit in, and I've done in the past when I've been at Cardiff, and now teams that sit in and you have to beat a block. There'll be teams that really, really want to go after you and come and high press you, and that changes, but you still keep your principles the same. You're still developing the players, and you still, allow it doesn't turn to, well, okay, if they're high pressing us, we'll just kick over it because we're going for the result. It's making sure you don't get caught up too much in just the result, because I think otherwise, largely in football, you'll end up disappointed more than you are, more than you're happy, because you potentially lose more games than you win. Especially players, you'll have more disappointments than maybe successes. So I think it's coming back to that. It's having that element of, okay, in a youth cup game, maybe you will change things slightly. Maybe you will put more onus on. Yeah, we are looking to win. Uh, there'll be other games where you'll probably be down to development, and you'll take the scoreline out of it, and you can still be pleased even if the scoreline's not what you want it to be. But no, I agree with you. I think that that sort of competitiveness, and that sort of, the want to win, and the importance of winning, and things like that, I think is really, really important. And the more we expose our players to that, I think it's not a bad thing, because ultimately that's the environment they're going into, is where the manager's job is on the line, and they do have to win, and they do have to win again, and they might lose three on the bounce, and they have to change something. Um, so yeah, it's just trying. I think it's doing both. It's giving them that competitive edge and giving them that competitive streak, but also making sure that there's development around it as well.
Yeah, I think if you look at the modern game now as well, just thinking about watching the game last night, um, a lot of teams now they don't have a plan B. It's plan A, isn't it? And you continue to be calm in that plan A and keep probing and keep probing. So I think there used to always be. I mean, it is still a big jump, isn't it, from maybe 21s or 18s to first team level. It is a massive jump, but I think that, like you say, that almost the element of right now 5 minutes to go, we're going to start playing a little bit longer. I don't think teams do that as much now. I think they're very much still trying to play the same way throughout the whole game, no matter what the circumstances are. This is the way that we play, and if that's how you think you're going to win a game of football initially,
Mm.
then the idea doesn't change. Like you say, there are some small adaptations to that, but I think obviously the massive one is Spurs. Spurs don't change the way they play and have been criticised for it. Like I said, I think I watched Liverpool last night, and I just felt they kept trying to do the same things
Mm.
rather than panicking, and especially in the game it was. I think they were quite frustrated first half, but they come out quite calm in the second half. I felt so.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel
I think you're right. I think that you look at a lot of head coaches now rather than managers. Is they have a playing style. Playing style is a key word. Principles, how you're going to play. And I think that you hear a lot of managers talk. If I use like Russell Martin as an example, has a way of playing, has a key set of principles that he sticks to, and he doesn't deviate from those. They're the things that he believes in, and they're the things that he goes after with his team. Very possession dominant. They look to build. Very, very patient. It'd have been quite easy for him to, after 3 games in the Premier League, to throw that out and try a different style. So I think a lot of coaches now have a set of what they believe, a coaching philosophy and a playing style that they believe. And I think that sometimes that marries up with some clubs. And I think once you start maybe deviating from that and going off off topic, or completely changing things, sometimes the players can get that and they can sort of, he maybe doesn't believe what he's talking about. He doesn't believe how he feels the game should be played. So I think a lot of them are really stuck with that. And ultimately they have principles that they feel work. They might not have a plan B, as in a different style, but they might have a plan B in terms of how they change that principle. Um, Probably what Liverpool were doing last night. I imagine they have a certain way that they want to break down a team. If that doesn't work, rather than going plan B, so to speak, and changing it completely, is probably subtle changes. It might be players' movements. It might be a different pattern. It might be where they threaten the opposition, or drag the opposition into a different space. So although it might look similar, there's probably subtle changes, or sometimes big changes within how they do it, where how many players they put on the top line, how many players they put on the second line, where the space is. Ultimately, that might dictate it. If you think of Man City, Man City don't change a great deal. I have seen Man City sit in and defend. I have seen Man City high press a team. I've seen Man City drop off as well. That they're able to do it, but in terms of their style and how they attack, they'll go where the space is. If they can't do it one way, they'll do it a different way, and they've got another way. So it might look similar, and you're right in terms of no plan B, so to speak, where it looks completely different to plan A. But I think they will have plan Bs, plan Cs that are slight changes on what they're trying to do.
Yeah, to be fair, I think the biggest change they made last night was the position of Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think he started quite deep, and then in the second half he pushed more into the midfield areas, almost like a deep liar. So that again is that's technically a plan B. It's a slightly different change, isn't it? And I think
Yeah,
they've spoken quite a lot. I think around Robertson spoke quite a lot around how Slot changes tactics in the game and reads the game quite well.
yeah.
So that's being able to adapt is a massive one.
Mhm.
In terms of your coaching philosophy and I suppose your principles, whatever words you want to use for them,
Mm.
if I came to watch one of your sessions,
Mm.
how do you think I would describe you as a coach and how you deliver?
So I'm very demanding as a coach, whether that be from a physical point of view, whether that be from a standards point of view, whether that be from a technical point of view, whatever's needed. I can be very demanding, and I can put a lot on the players, um, because I feel that's important, that the environment is right. So you'll definitely see that. Now, how that looks can be different. Um, Although I'm still demanding, that doesn't mean me shouting and screaming. I can still be demanding in different ways. So definitely demanding. Uh, Authentic. I think I'm very, very authentic with the players. I'm honest with the players. Um, in terms of feedback, in terms of information, anything like that. I'm very, very authentic with them, and I know that that's how you build their trust. So I make sure that I've got their relationship. So what you'll see, I know I can laugh and joke with. I know how to. It's that, I suppose, the sort of tagline I try and put it around is, if you try and think of your favorite teacher in school, if you try and think of him now, and picture him or her, sorry, and you picture them. They were the the lessons you enjoyed the most. You very rarely missed them because you enjoyed them, but also you knew where the line was. You knew how much how far you could push, without, but you knew you didn't want to overstep that mark, and you knew where the boundaries were. And that's probably how I would try and get myself across. Is, I think you want to be approachable to them. You want to be authentic. You want the players to enjoy coming and enjoy training, but also having that environment where they can enjoy themselves, but they know where the line is. They know where they've overstepped. They know where they maybe not training to their level, and that's where the the demanding comes in. So that's how I would probably try and look at it. Is a good, relaxed, enjoyable environment, where players are hopefully learning, or players are looking to learn, but done in a really, really intense hard-working way.
And you, you mentioned how long you'd spent at Cardiff, so a good number of years at Cardiff.
Mm.
How did you find moving into a new environment, and what were the biggest challenges of that? And also, you spoke about building trust. Was there something when you moved, when you think, well, my first session's coming up, I have to do this in order to build their trust? Was there something?
Yeah, good questions, really. In terms of the first part in Cardiff, yeah, look, I took loads from it. There was loads of different experiences and challenges, and with different, whether it be different academy managers, whether it be different styles of play, whether it be different concepts that we tried, or to enhance player development or anything like that. I think we really were. I was really fortunate that I was working with a group of staff that were really forward thinking and really sort of open to trialing new things, and all around just making the players better. So I think that really improved me, because we were always felt like we were looking for what else can we do? What can we do that's different? You know, the phrase, what makes the boat go faster? What can we do? What better? So that was really key for me in terms of my learning and my development, to work with, fortunate to work with such a talented group of staff. Um, in terms of moving here, um, being the new boy again. But I think one thing I will say is, I think the staff and the people here at Derby at the moment are unbelievable. Like, so accommodating, so friendly, so down to earth, humble people. They just make you feel welcome straight away the minute you walk through the door. Um, so you do feel that, right? Okay, I'm the new guy going into a new environment. How's that going to feel? But that can all be taken away by the strength of the staff. And I think that's what we've got currently at Derby, is just such a humble group of staff, similar to what I had at Cardiff, that are all about player development, want to make the players better, want to make the environment better. And you see yourself, I suppose, in them, and you think, yeah, do you know, I also want to be a part of that. And they make you really feel welcome. So I did have nerves going in, and you're thinking, okay, how's it gonna go? But that was quickly taken away by the environment. And then in terms of with the players, yeah, definitely in terms of building relationships, I did have some things in my head in terms of, right, okay, how do we go about it? And that's not just players, that's staff as well. Okay, how do we go about it? I suppose it's very much the individual stuff first. So speaking to them on an individual basis, whether it be pre-training, whether it be post-training, whether it be at lunch, just trying to get those conversations with staff, with players, sometimes not about football, sometimes just trying to find out about them. And it's good coming in to a different environment, because I didn't know them, so I could ask them questions that maybe they hadn't been asked for a while, that maybe some staff already knew, or maybe they changed and they wanted to express something different. So that was really key at first, in my first sort of month in the role, is to try and just generate and have as many conversations with as many people as I could. A little bit about football, a little bit about how they are and how they learn, and different things like that. And then I think on the grass, it's making sure that the sessions are, you're still being yourself. There's no good me coming into a new environment and then saying, all right, okay, I want them to like me, so maybe I'll let off on some of my principles. It was about setting my principles, but knowing which ones I can introduce straight away and which ones you need to build up, and understand that some will be met with some confusion, some will be met with maybe disgruntlement, some will be accepted straight away. And that's through observing sessions as well, understanding that, do you know what, look, the staff are really demanding on them, so it's okay for me to be demanding. And then understanding which ones are my principles I could get out straight away. I always find that finishing practices are really, high energy finishing practices are always a good way to get the players on board. My first couple of sessions were a lot of finishing practices. I'd work with a lot of the attackers. Then other people want to get involved, other players want to join in, that they see that, and you get that. Once you've got that buzz around it, I suppose then the players, like anything, I suppose they've got to look at you and think, yeah, do you know what, he's all right, he is. And that can be done on the grass, that can be done off the grass, that can be done with, like I said, a simple conversation. So it's just understanding how to go about it, and that's all I did in my first couple of months, and I'm still doing that. To be honest, I'm still pulling players as often as I can to get as much information about them, whether it be about how they felt they played, what position they think is best for them, um, what do they enjoy about training, what from an individual point of view can I help them with. So I'm still getting those conversations. I'm still doing that now, but initially I suppose it was you've got to get the players to buy into you and buy into what you're doing. Um, and yeah, I just found that a lot of fun practices, finishing, whether it be ball striking, whether it be competition, was a good way to get the players on side early.
Yes, that sort of balancing act of trying to get them to let their guard down a little bit, but in order to do that, you need to let your guard down a little bit, and it's about how much do you let yours down without them feeling, I suppose, too comfortable,
Hmm.
and going from, as I suppose, building trust to almost maybe not seeing it as a friendship, but seeing it as a not a professional
Yeah,
relationship. It's about trying to
absolutely.
balance, isn't it?
Absolutely spot on. And I think that's sometimes the mistake. I think when you go in and I see it with young coaches, they sometimes they want the players to like them. They want to be friends, or first of all, if they're my friend, they listen to me. But I think you've got to understand what you're there to do. You've got a job to do, and you've got to make sure that you give them what they need, not what they want. And sometimes some players don't want to do what they can do. So yeah, it is. You're exactly right. It's building that relationship, and it takes time, and it will do now. That there's still some players that I feel that you haven't cracked yet. That I need to have more conversations with him. Whether it be on the bus, whether it be traveling to a game, pre-game, post-game, when he's maybe at his high, if he's had a really, really good session and he's buzzing and he's smiling, it might be right. That's my time to go and speak to him because he's more receptive to it. It's just picking those moments when to have those conversations with players, when to have those meetings with players. But then, like you said, without compromising yourself, um, and compromising your principles.
Do you find it easier to do that because of your role being around individual development? So you work with maybe individuals or smaller groups. So do you find that it's easier to then build that rapport because you're getting the times? Whereas if you're working with a group, you're limited to the amount of times where maybe you can work with somebody as an individual or speak to someone as an individual. Whereas in your role working as an individual coach, you might get more time to do that. Do you find that, or do you just is
Yeah,
it
it can be both really. You do obviously naturally, organically, you get the more opportunity to speak to the players because you might be working in small groups, or with one player, or doing analysis with one player, or a unit. So you do get the smaller groups. I think from a team point of view, and I still do it now, is sometimes doing it. It doesn't have to be on the grass. I think that's where I was able to do it from a group setting as well. Because yeah, you're right. When you're doing a team training session, so if I am, for example, so if the under 18s are doing a match prep session, I'll probably be a shadow coach, and I'll probably step aside. I won't step in with the players. It'll be very much concurrent. It might be during breaks that I just speak to those one or two players, and it's very much a team session. Now, how I can still get around those is maybe the warm up, walking to and from the pitch, in pre-act. There's still opportunities for me to have those conversations with the players. That's maybe not on the grass, and that's what I did with the team setting. When I was obviously when I was leading groups, um, you'd still have those individual contacts with those players, but sometimes part of the session would be a team focus. So it is easier because you naturally end up working in smaller groups. But if I only waited for that opportunity, that could be a small part of the week. So, for example, we do position specific, we do individual work at different stages through the week. If I just waited for that time to have those interactions, I wouldn't cover as many players. I think it's just as powerful, walking to the pitch and just standing in between two players and speaking to them. Um, they don't realize it's happening. They don't realize you're trying to draw information out of them, or build a relationship with them. And then you might not speak to them again for the rest of the session. Um, Even, like I said, even if it's just a way in, or like the scores last night, and it's just a way in, it's just a conversation in. But yeah, so I think even within a team setting, if I was to go back to be a coach of a group, I think I'd still continue those individual contacts.
And in terms of IDPs is massive now, isn't it? In academy football, that sort of individual support. How do you utilise IDPs at Derby? Would you say it's similar to how you did at Cardiff? And is
Mm.
that maybe, have you had an influence on that, or is it completely different? And
Mm.
you've had to sort of buy into how Derby run things, or have you had a say in how it's implemented, and how does it work?
Yeah, so at Cardiff, we changed it a couple of times. Like I said, we changed the style of the IDP. We would change it would still be a four corner model, especially the schoolboys program. Um, Slight changes at PDP. I felt they were almost like ever evolving. I think if we did get to a point where I think we nailed one down, and um, in a previous audit, with the EPPP, they came back that they said our IDPs were sort of like exemplary, really, really good, that they were unified, they covered everything, they were visible. So I think I had a good experience of sort of building those, and what works, what didn't work, um, how you implement them. I had a lot of experience of that from Cardiff, and then coming into Derby, um, they had an IDP in place, that I was fortunate enough that I was able to sort of tweak and adjust slightly, before rolling out to the players. And we're currently in the process of building a new IDP, that'll run from 15s to 21s, that I'm in. Me and another member of staff are compiling and sort of piloting ahead of next season. Um, and that's more so around, I suppose, what that player needs. I think when you get to 15s to 21s, I think what we've seen with the IDP is maybe you come away from the four corner model, um, and you really go after that one thing that's going to get them the opportunity. So if I think of the 21s, for example, what's going to get them training with the first team, and it's building that, getting that information from staff, but also then putting a plan in place to how do we make that happen. And you might find that a lot of them, as they get older, it could be physical, could be psychological, or social elements that you can still go after. Still having their strengths, still having areas to develop, but this one key factor, that what will get them there, what gets them there, what keeps them there, and what might stop them getting there. And those three sort of pillars are what we're going after, from an IDP, around 15s to 21s, whether it's for scholarship, whether it's professional contracts, whether it's getting to the first team, is trying to nail down what is that one thing that those players need. And then as a group of staff, whether it be 18s, 21 staff, an MDT, whether it's myself, it's then delegating that, where that player needs support, where that player needs help. If it's physical, then it's me working with the sports scientist, to make sure that he improves. Whether it's psychological, it's me working with a psychologist, and how do we help in this area, and what can we do. If it's tactical, it might be the lead coach that helps. If it's technical, it might be down to me and one other member of staff. But it's really going after what they need, rather than, sometimes I think you sit down with a player and the player will tell you what he wants to do, or you'll put some things on an IDP that look great, and they look great laminated, and they look lovely on the wall, but how do you really implement them? When you've got that focus with the player, is right, okay, be fortunate enough to speak to the first team manager. Okay, spoke to the first team manager. This is what he says will get you an opportunity to train with the first team, or this is what he wants to see. This is what we're going after. And it really streamlines and narrows down what that player needs to go after. Otherwise, like I said, everyone's got opinions in football, could end up with 6 or 7 things that they think he's good at, and 9 or 10 things that he needs to work on, and then we're not really going after anything. So it's streamlining it all into what will get them there, what we feel will get them there, and then really going after that.
And what's the sort of reference point for that? Is it data driven, or is it just conversations with the first team manager and what he wants to see from his players? Like, what is the reference point for that?
Yeah, it's both really. So from a physical element, it could be data. From a match game impact straight away, it could be data. You definitely use data to support or back up development or areas of improvement, and also strengths. But also it's the conversations with the first team manager and the first team staff, 21 staff, 18 staff, around about what they feel they've seen the player, and that's what they feel he needs to work on. And ultimately, if it's coming from them, I feel there's that little bit of accountability. If we turn to the 21 staff and say, look, we've got under 18 who we think, could have an opportunity to train and play with the 21s, what does he need to do? And they have a look at him and they come back and say, look, we think it's X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, that's the bits that we'll go after then, because you've seen it, you've witnessed it, you've identified it. Therefore, that's the gap that we'll try and close, to go after with our player. You might use data to support it, but yeah, ultimately, I think sometimes, as much as good as data is, a manager's opinion, sometimes that's the opinion you need. That's the mind you have to change. Whether it's, like I said, first team staff who are brilliant, by the way, who will really, really, really communicate really, really well with academy staff, and help us in terms of what do these young players need.
In terms of your role now, actually, I suppose in your role now and also your experience as sort of phase lead at Cardiff, how are the IDPs implemented into the games program?
Yeah, into the games program, I think they're more so on reflection after the game, maybe not pre-game. It could be post-game, in terms of we have players generate clips of what they feel, what their strengths were or what their weaknesses were from that game around their IDP. So if their strength is sort of finishing, then they'll clip a couple of things around that. If it's sort of end product, then maybe they'll do a couple where their end product needs to improve, and then that's the dialogue post game. A lot of it then would be done in the week. When you start getting into the match prep and the match day, I think sometimes there will be sort of conversation. So I'll bullseye players on a match day that I'll work with during a game, or unit. So if I'm working with a high potential player who's a centre forward, for example, there's no good me working with him if the midfield line can't get him the ball in the right way. So I'll probably need to work with that unit as well as that individual, so might be across with both, still around their IDPs. But sometimes, like you said, you've got to give what the game presents, and what the game is challenging you with. And I think sometimes if you're telling players to, well, not that you would, but if you're telling players to look to try and get 5 passes with your weaker foot, that might not present itself in the right opportunity to do that during a game. But on reflection, post game, once you watch it back, there might be opportunities where they take more touches because they don't want to use their weaker foot. That might be a chance to reflect and go back and say, right, okay, you might have been an opportunity where you could have developed that, or you could have used that. So I think the post game is always better to reflect on maybe the challenges during the game. I think to give them a challenge, even though they're still young players, they can still take things literally. I use an example on the weekend. I asked a player to sort of increase his scanning. I said, look, I'm not going to count it. I'm not going to do anything like that. I said, I just want you to try and increase. We've done it through the week. We've done it in build up to the week. So this wasn't just off the cuff. And it was almost like a thing of, okay, can we try and increase it during a game? And that's easy for me to notice. And I just said to him, look, be prepared to feedback at half time with how you felt it went. And he by the half time he was sort of we were losing at the half time, and I came to him and he said, he's like, oh, to be honest, I forgot. I said, it's yes, probably because the emotion of the game has taken the importance, and you haven't maybe thought about it. And I just said, that's okay, that's fine. You know, can we try and keep it in your head? Or okay, we'll reflect back on it on next week. So this week now I'll probably sit down with that player and go through that game and probably identify areas where, I could help him with his scanning. Did he scan too much? Did he not scan enough? Did he scan at different times? Um, and then try and reflect on that. So that's how I suppose it works from a match day point of view, if that makes sense. But a lot of those IDPs in terms of um, will be done through the week.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for jumping on. We've got through a lot. We've got through a lot there, and I found it so. I'm taking notes as I go, so you see me with my head down. I appreciate how honest and willing you've been to share your knowledge, because, like I said, I know that I've definitely got some take homes, got lots of notes here, and I'm sure our listeners will feel the same. So, again, really appreciate you jumping on, and I really appreciate how open and honest you've been.
No problem. No problem. Thank you very much. And like I said, if there's anything you think of in terms of questions or anything like that, I am open. Like I said, I'm very authentic in terms of that. I needed the support of other people to get to where I was, whether that be through asking questions, whether that be from observing, whether that be from listening to podcasts exactly like this. So yeah, I'm always happy to help others as well. Like I said, it's the same with players. I've got that enjoyment of helping players. I've also got the enjoyment of helping staff as well, and helping anybody who got aspirations to work in football or aspirations to do anything. I'm always happy to help.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Al.
No problem. Thank you.